Hello and welcome to another Carfection news, where we round up all the things that have happened, well, not all the things that have happened, the most interesting things that have caught my eye over the last 10 days to 2 weeks. Starting with the Renault 5 concept that was unveiled as part of the, I'm going to say it, Renaulution. See what this is? A revolution. Renaulution. Terrible, isn't it? What? I mean, that is an appalling pun. But it's the plan of Renault's CEO, Luca De Meo. I love saying that name, Luca De Meo. Sounds just drips off the tongue, doesn't it? Previously of Fiat and Seat before. And we'll come back to Alpine in a minute. But the highlight was this Renault 5 concept. And it's an all-electric city car, but they're saying there might be a performance variant, which would then fall under the Alpine range. And it just looks great, doesn't it? It looks really, really cool in that golden sort of yellow paintwork. And there's a reason for that, because the chap that's in charge now of Renault design is a chap called Gilles Vidal, which is a fantastically French name. I met him when I think he just joined Peugeot as their head of design. So he's been part of the PSA group, Peugeot Citroën group, for a long time prior to this. But he was the person that was in charge of Peugeot, sort of the cars like the 208 and the 508, and I think Peugeots look fantastic at the moment. They're really crisp. I mean, regardless of what they like to drive, looks wise, brilliant. So I think the fact they've got Gilles Vidal, he did the E-Legend as well, which I mentioned last time, another fantastic car. So I think it's really, really good news that he is on board and bodes very well for Renault stylistically in the future. Now, I mentioned Alpine just then. Alpine is going to be an all-electric brand going forward, so it's going to be still sort of sports cars. So the hot hatch variant of this Renault 5, we don't know when it's coming, by the way. They're saying 7 new electric Renaults, I think, by 2025. So presumably somewhere within then, and then the Alpine somewhere after that. But yeah, we should see an Alpine version of this as the hot hatch. They're going to do a crossover. Interestingly, they also teamed up with Lotus to do the sort of, I suppose, the follow-up to the A110, which will be electric. And that just seems like a great idea because, well, obviously Lotus has got the Evija, so they've got a certain amount of know-how, but the two companies, you think about what they produce and sort of the Elise and the A110, their ethos, lightweight, it seems to marry up really, really well. So that seems like a really good match to have made. Incidentally, will we see this Renault 5, Alpine Renault 5, will we see another use of turbo, another inappropriate use of turbo? I don't know, like the Taycan. Next up, the Ford Escort Mk2, a brand new one, except it looks like an old one, but it is brand new because it has a 70 plate on it. It's been built by Motorsport Tools, who are based in North Wales, and they've been able to do this because it's got a brand new body shell, and it goes through something called IVA, which used to be SVA, which is the individual vehicle approval. It used to be single vehicle approval, which, and this is from the government's website. IVA is a UK national approval scheme for vehicles and trailers imported, assembled or manufactured in very small numbers or as individual vehicles, e.g. amateur build cars, bespoke trailers, etc. So it's basically a means of checking that they broadly meet the technical and safety requirements. The disadvantage is that for every single vehicle it has to go to a test centre to be checked, etc. So it wouldn't make sense for big manufacturers, but it means that you can have what is essentially a brand new Escort Mk2, and it looks fantastic. I love the red colour scheme with the gold wheels. That might appear on another Escort at some point. Obviously has sort of various historic connotations, that sort of livery. It's the engine in this, it's got a 2.5 litre Duratec putting out about 200 brake horsepower, 6-speed manual, originally from a Mazda apparently, but you can have a sequential shift in there as well if you want. There are also other engine options so you have BDG, or you could have a Millington. Millington, oh, wonderful, for about 300 brake horsepower. So you can spec it as you want. And other things it's got, so it's got fully floating Atlas rear axle, Bilsteins in this, but you can also have Öhlins or Reigers for your dampers, depending on your sort of budget or preference. AP Racing brakes in it, the say mini light wheels, and you can have two different body shapes. You can have wide arch or normal arch. They're also talking about doing, I think, a Mark 1 as well of this build. It's I think looks fantastic. It's just a really sort of cool thing. It's obviously more stripped out than other sort of, it's not really is it a resto mod? I don't know, because it's a brand new car, but probably not a resto, but you know what I mean. Within that sort of genre of thing, it costs, well, they say £65,000 plus taxes for this entry one with the Bilsteins and the 2.5 litre Durotex. Obviously that can spiral. Millingtons, I think they cost sort of about £30,000 on their own. So it's not a cheap thing, and that's plus taxes, so £78,000 in the UK, including taxes. But I think actually when you look at the cost of other things out there, probably 100 grand once you've bunged everything that you want in there. The interior, no, it's not going to be as plush as others. It's probably going to be more stripped out, although we'll do bespoke things for it. But yeah, sounds like an awful lot of fun to me if I had that sort of money kicking around for something. Of course, you can have a fully newly built rally car. It doesn't have to be a road car, although rally cars are road car. You know what I mean? It could be full competition spec, or it could be more of a road car. And yeah, I just love it. I think it's brilliant that they've done it. So that is my, well, sort of pick of the week, I suppose, if we're going from the top. There might be news on another Mark II Escort, my own one, at some point this year. He laughs hollowly at this point, but yeah, hopefully, you never know. Me and ACH will get there eventually. Next up, a bit of limited edition Porsche news, because we have the Boxster 25th anniversary. This is celebrating obviously the launch of the Boxster 25 years ago, 1996, but it sort of goes further back than that, because in 1993 at the Detroit Motor Show they first unveiled the Boxster concept, and this takes an awful lot of styling cues from that. So this is based from the GTS 4 litre Boxster, so mechanically that's where it comes from, but the styling is, well, yeah, harking back to that original concept, which didn't really change a lot until it came out 3 years later. So design features in particular, we've got neodyme, a copper-like shimmering brown, they say, which provides a contrast to the sort of the GT silver as standard, although you can get deep black metallic and Carrara white as the sort of the base colour as well. The big talking point really is the wheels, which have kind of garnered a fair bit of comment. They've certainly filled the arches very well. They're 20-inch wheels. The same colour, that copper-like colour, is also on the front aprons, side air intakes, the monobar, as well as the lettering. Inside, you've got a Bordeaux leather, so a really nice deep red leather, and you've got the fabric roof as well. Overall, yeah, I think it looks quite good. Mechanically, it's just a styling exercise really, isn't it? But quite nice nonetheless. Interestingly, they said they've built 357,000 Boxsters during its lifetime, which I reckon equates to just under 15,000 a year, which doesn't seem like that many, but there we are. Now, Porsche, as we know, is going back to the top tier of endurance racing at some point, but that won't be for a little while yet. But Toyota has unveiled its new Le Mans Challenger, which will also take part in the World Endurance Championship, which is due to start at Sebring in March. Whether it will or not, we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, they've revealed their car, and it looks, well, it takes an awful lot of influence, sort of at first glance anyway, from the old TS050. This is called the GR010, or GR010, however you want to pronounce it, and it's obviously taking this new hybrid supercar sort of set of formulas, so the LMH, Le Mans hypercar set of rules, and working around those, which is quite interesting. The Porsche is going to be to the LMDH, which is sort of, well, more the IMSA set of regulations, but we'll come back to all that in just a second. For the moment, this gets a 3.6 litre twin turbo V6 as the main engine, 671 brake horsepower that puts out, but then on the front axle there's an electric motor which puts out 268 brake horsepower. Now, the thing is, overall it only puts out 671 brake horsepower, so the same amount that the V6 can put out. But you think, well, hang on a minute, but 671 plus 268, but what has to happen is that you have a global, as they call it, output of 671 brake horsepower. So every time the electric motor kicks in, the power coming from the V6 has to reduce, so that, you say, it never puts out more than that 671 brake horsepower. Also, interestingly, the electric motor can only kick in above 75 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour. So you won't get that instant sort of four-wheel drive push off the corners. This is to help sort of balance it out between the hybrid cars and the rear-wheel drive cars that don't have any hybrid in them. It's all designed around making this formula more competitive, really. They're going to be slower overall, so slightly heavier overall. The weight is now 1,060 kilos, which is 162 kilos more than the old LMP1 cars. They're longer, wider and higher. Aerodynamics are more restricted, so you can only have one package for the season, so you can't have a high downforce and a low downforce package. This is obviously leaning more towards Le Mans. They've admitted that because Le Mans is the biggest race, so it's more of a low downforce package. They allowed one movable element, which is the rear wing on this particular car. Now, as I say, they're going to be run under the balance of performance, so it should be sort of, whatever you create, it's then, the field should be relatively level, and that means that the drivers will have potentially sort of more input, and the teams obviously around them, because you've got to have a really clean race. If all the cars are essentially the same on performance, then the drivers can arguably have more of an input into the outcome of the race. It's interesting in that, so the reason they've gone for these set of rules is because they wanted to cut costs, and as the chief technical officer for Toyota said, performance costs. So that's true, and they've reduced the lap times. So they're aiming for a sort of 3-minute 30 lap time around Le Mans, which is about sort of 10 seconds slower roughly than it was before, and it's going to be 45 seconds slower around the average WEC lap as well. They also say they wanted parity between the LMDH set of regs and this LMH set of regs, so you could have the same car that will race at the Daytona 24 as the Le Mans 24, which is nice and sort of makes sense. But it does mean that these LMH rules have been slightly watered down from what we originally heard about with the sort of the 1,000 brake horsepower and things like that. We were also been expecting a certain tie-up between the race cars and road cars in future. We want to see more road car-like cars competing on the track, like the old GT1 days. Whether that will happen so much or not, I'm not quite sure. We've already know we've got the Glickenhaus, which there should be a road version of. Bicolores is the other company that's been sort of announced for this year, and then Audi and Porsche and Peugeot will come in the future. But Toyota, their Gazoo Racing Supersport, which we've known about some time, and it was obviously previewed just before the Le Mans race last year, they didn't really give any more details about it with the launch of their new racer, which we kind of expected, I suppose. I thought there'd be a few more details. It seems that stylistically there will be a bit of a match up between the look of the race car at the front and the rear and the wheel arches. They said there'd been certain sort of talking between the style department and the race department in terms of making sure that there was a brand identity, I suppose, but we didn't get much more than that. So it seems like the powertrain will still, in the road car, be related to the old TS 050 as opposed to the new GR 010. There we are. We shall have to wait and see. But yeah, it looks like a cool thing, and certainly any sort of road going version of it would undoubtedly be exciting, no matter what is underneath the skin. Moving away from motorsport just for a minute, we'll come back to it at the end. Saw this from the SMMT, who collate all the sort of the facts and figures for the motor industry. And in the UK, most cars sold were grey. So the top three places, 1.63 million cars were sold in the UK last year, 397,000 of which, or 24.3%, were painted grey. In second place with 19.9% was black, and with 17.4% white was third. So apparently a primary colour hasn't made the podium since 2010. It's a pretty monotone sort of looking palette out there in the car world. Blue was fourth, red was fifth, silver was sixth, and after that it's sort of, so silver, there were just over 200,000 vehicles sold in silver, and then it's a big drop down to seventh, which is they only sold 26,000 in seventh, which was orange, which is quite a surprise. Surprisingly, in nine was bronze, so there we are. Perhaps they could have sort of combined bronze and orange, fairly sort of similar. Don't have a go at me, bronze fans, I'm sorry. It did get me thinking. I do wonder if I was in the position to be buying a new car, new Porsche or something like that I sort of had my heart set on something exciting, or a supercar, a Lamborghini, would I get it in an exciting colour? Would I be sort of, buy a mint green 911, or, would I go for, I don't know, bright orange Lamborghini or something? I don't know. I love some of those wild colours. I love some of the cars that we get as press cars, because they tend to put them in the sort of the bolder looking colours. But I think perhaps, I don't know, perhaps I would just think I don't want people looking at me. I don't want to attract that much attention over and above the fact you're already driving around in a supercar or something. I know this is for more general cars, but yeah, there we go. Let me know in the comments below. Would you be bold enough, when push came to shove, not just colours that you like to look at, but actually if you were buying that sort of car, would you go for a bolder colour? Maybe something like a dark green, make green great again. Perhaps that's sort of something interesting but subtle. There we are. Let's finish with a bit of Dakar Rally news, because that finished at the weekend and it always adds a bit of delight, motorsport delight, to this time of year. It was won by none other than Stefan Petterhansel for the 14th time. So he won 6 times in the bikes, and he since moved to the cars, and he's won 8 times in the cars, and that's the most times anybody's won in a single category. So I think it was previously held by one of the truck drivers who'd won 7. Anyway, he's now holds that record outright on his own. He was pushed hard initially by his teammate in the Mini X-Ray buggies, Carlos Sainz, but then Carlos Sainz had some puncture issues. He dropped back, and it was Nasser Al-Attiyah who pushed him really, really hard all the way in a Gazoo Racing Hilux. But it was ding dong all the way through. But Petterhansel sort of continues to rewrite the record books. It was nice in the other categories. Sam Sunderland came in 3rd in the bikes, but again, KTM's beaten by Honda. It was Benavides and Brabak who won, or Benavides won, Brabak was 2nd in the bike category, and that was again another category that right up until the sort of the last few days it was shifting around all over the place. The side-by-sides, actually, I saw quite a lot of this year, and those sort of the smaller buggies, if you like, because there are a couple of names in there taking part for the first time. Chris Meek, ex of the World Rally Championship, and Matthias Ekstrom, and nice to see both of them taking part and clearly having an absolute whale of a time. Chris set in some really good stage times towards the end. He won the last stage, I think, in fact, but both were sort of a fair way down the overall, but seemed to love the adventure of it, and I think we'll be back in the future. Oh, it was also 30 years to the day since Petterhansel won his first victory in the Dakar, which is pretty amazing. For now, we thought we'd leave you with some of the amazing images to come out of this year's Dakar. So I'll say thank you very much for watching, and see you again soon.